Hi there, this is Justin Krane, Certified Financial Planner Professional and founder of Krane Financial Solutions. Welcome to Money You Got This. So how can you really live? How? By uniting your business money, your personal money with your life and your business. Word up.
Krane Financial is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only, and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products.
Hey everyone, welcome to Money You Got This. This show is brought to you by Krane Financial Solutions. I'm Justin Krane. I'm a certified financial planner professional. I offer investment management services and do financial planning. I'm also the author of the book, Money You Got This. It's a funny book about life, money, and business. Crazy, funny stories. I'm psyched you're listening to the show. I want to give you this free report, 3 things multimillionaires do to grow their wealth. Just go to coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. That's coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. Thanks. Today we've got a great guest, and I picked it. I literally handpicked this one out of my passion for losing myself in genealogy and ancestry.com. Today we have, I'm just gonna say, the lead genealogist for Ancestry. Even if you are not, you are. And thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Janette Silverman. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm grateful that you handpicked me.
Awesome. So how did I find you? Well, I actually found you through my son, Jonah Krane, who is also on the show today. Giving a shout out to Jonah. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Hope everyone's doing well as well.
Cool. So a quick background on Janette. So Dr. Janette Silverman has been active in genealogical research. I know I'm going to stumble on that like all the time. For over 3 decades, she began her genealogical journey by researching her own family. She began searching for her family's roots with absolute certainty that there would be no way to find any data on her family prior to their arrival in the US. She quickly learned that when it comes to genealogical research, preconceived assumptions or received family lore are often wrong, an approach which has become the pole star of her historically approach to genealogy. So we're gonna have to get into that. Not only did you find your family roots in Europe, but you traced documents of your family of all 4 of your grandparents in Eastern Europe. So there's a lot more that you do, and we're gonna get to know you, but this is the official welcome. Dr. J, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And you've picked up my favorite nickname. When I got my doctorate, my cousin said to me, "Do I have to call you Dr. Janet now?" And I said, "No, Dr. J will be just fine." And since I'm not into sports, the sports metaphor was really unusual for me to pick on.
Amazing. So let's start off with just everyone, coronavirus, we don't have much going on. We have a lot more downtime. Why do you think everyone is a lot more interested in creating a family tree in their past? Why is it so stimulating for so much of us? How do we get stuck on Ancestry for 7 hours and we don't even change our clothes or PJs? And the next thing we know, we have bedhead and it's time for dinner.
It is so addictive. I started this journey of mine about 40 years ago, maybe more than 40 years ago, with my dad, who's now 94. And he and I just kind of started playing around with this. We were interested in understanding who his mother was and her family. His mother died when my dad was 29, and I was very young. And we didn't know anything. And my grandfather, my father's father, didn't want to really talk about her. They married in the US, but he certainly knew a lot about her family's history in Europe. So, what do you do when somebody keeps telling you, I don't know, or go away, little girl, you don't want to know about this? You say, forget it. I do want to know about it, and I am going to figure it out. And persist.
What did you find?
Well, I found all kinds of strange things. I found places that I'd never heard of before that are now in Ukraine, that are in Romania and Belarus. I found facts about my family who was killed during the Holocaust. I found information about my family that arrived in the US starting in the 1880s. So
Wow.
my New York roots go all the way back to about 1888.
Wow. And it must have brought you a lot closer to your father. Like it must have been pretty cool to do it with him.
Yeah, and my dad is still my favorite research partner. I would swear that my father knows just about everything there is to know about Brooklyn. And so whenever I've got any research to do that takes me to New York and I need some insight, I'll call my father up and I'll go, okay, what can you tell me about this neighborhood? Oh, there was a drugstore on this corner and you used to walk down and you'd see a candy store and we stopped for an egg cream over here and there was a bakery that had, and I get this from both of my parents.
Wow. That's awesome. So,
And
you're going to say something.
yeah, I was just going to say, and yes, it's brought me a lot closer, not only to them, but also to my cousins, my aunts and uncles, my sisters. Everybody calls me and asks me questions. And then we use that as a jumping off point to
Yeah. You
understand
do like a weekly Zoom with your whole fam?
daily.
Oh, you do a daily Zoom?
Yeah,
It's
ever
like brushing
since,
your teeth or something. That's great.
yeah, ever since the shutdown from COVID-19, my family's scattered all over the country. Most of them are on the East Coast, and I can't travel the way I was. I would be out there every 2 or 3 months, and can't do that. So we've decided to talk to each other daily.
That's cool. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about your path into, really becoming a lead genealogist. How did you get into it? Did you stumble on it or did you always have an interest in doing it?
Well, it's odd because a couple of years ago, I reconnected with an old college roommate who
Hmm.
remembered that I was into this back in college. I don't remember that. I remember very little about college. It was too long ago. I have problems remembering what I had for breakfast, much less all those years ago. But yeah, I've probably have always been interested to one degree or another. Over the years, the more you find, the more addictive it is.
Yeah.
The more you want to find, you need to find. You start looking at one person and all of a sudden that leads you to something else. And oh, there was somebody in the family with this name back then. And you start digging in to see the connections. It's a disaster if you've got anything else on your plate
Yeah.
for that particular day. So now I do it for clients, and it's just as addictive. It
But,
doesn't
but
matter family.
so tell us about the path though. Tell us how you got into it. Like what were the steps that you were like, okay, I could do this for a living. Like this is super cool.
Well, I don't think I ever really made a decision. I can do this for a living. I was a Jewish educator for many, many years. I ran education programs in synagogues, at Jewish federations, at Hillel, for children from preschool through adulthood.
Hmm.
Okay, children, teens, adults. And as the years went by, there were things about Jewish history that I found really captured my imagination. And then I would meet people who weren't Jewish, who had all of these ancestral lines. They could say, oh yeah, I can trace my ancestry back to the Mayflower. And I'd like, oh, I could never do that. This doesn't exist. I'm Jewish. I'm a
Yeah.
Jew from Eastern Europe. No way can this happen. And then in 1989, I saw an ad in a magazine. I have no idea what magazine it was. I want to say it was Hadassah, but I don't know that.
Yeah.
And it was for a family tree maker. And they were saying, if you want to trace your ancestral history and you want to do this. And so I said to my father, can you buy this for me for my birthday? And I didn't actually remember that. He told me that not too long ago. So he bought me this in 1989. And we started playing with this on our computers. And remember what computers were like then? The whole
They're like
computer.
huge boxes.
Yeah, and they had about as much memory space as
Yeah.
one program takes up today.
So you've been doing this for 31 years with your dad.
I've been doing it for longer than that because we started before it was on the computer. Having
Wow.
it on the computer with Family Tree Maker opened a huge door because Family Tree Maker started putting together all of these other um, databases that they would sell to you on disks. And so you could look through, I don't remember which databases it was, but you could look through lists of names. Maybe you could look through censuses. You could look through a lot of things that all of a sudden, wow.
Wow.
So you want to hear a real fall asleep while you're sitting in your chair? Try looking at the US Census,
Oh, forget it.
page by page.
Forget it. Yeah,
And
no, that's because I've clicked on some of those links on Ancestry, and they blow, and you see like 4 million names, and you're like, how am I supposed to make any sense of that?
right,
So,
and so on Ancestry, though, you would click on it and you'd go to the page that that family's
oh,
on, and
sure.
you'd be able,
Yeah.
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 So back in the day, though, we were literally turning the pages, thousands and thousands of pages in any particular city to look for a name. So you've got all these names on a page and you're looking down all of these names to see if you can find the one name that you're searching for. And you're trying to do it without falling asleep.
I'm hearing like the Mission Impossible theme song playing while you and your dad are trying to find these names. Like, that's insane. So
Yeah.
that's how you got into it. Let me ask you this question, because I've thought of this, because I was going to ask you about this anyways, but I'm going to ask you about it on the show. How far back? So, as you know, we're Jewish and
Mhm.
we're Eastern Europe. Like, we did the
Mhm.
ancestry test. It says 100% Eastern Europe. How far back can we really go?
Well, you can really go pretty far back. I have personal records of my family in what's now Ukraine that date back to 1795, I think it is,
Wow.
census revision list. It's the first one that was done in the Russian Empire. So the Russian Empire was one of the largest was a place where one of the largest Jewish populations lived back in the day. The other place was the Austrian Empire. So if you've heard about Galicianers, they
Yeah.
were from the Austrian Empire. The Pale of Settlement was an area in the Russian Empire. And these places came into being between 1772 and 1795. I may
Wow.
have the
So
dates
you
a little
can't
off.
go back before, let's say, the 1800s, can you?
Oh, yeah. So we found the census record with my family on it from 1795, and that gave us people's ages. So we know that who people were that were born in those places because it tells you what town they're registered in.
Yeah.
So we know where they were born and we know when they were born. So that takes us back to the mid 1700s because some of these people were in their 50s and 60s
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But I've done client research elsewhere. We're looking at some Dutch records for a particular client that we've traced back to the early 1600s. And
Wow.
we're just waiting to get some other records that we know is going to take us earlier than that. I've done other research, French records, where it's taken us back a similar period
Wow.
of time.
I was in Israel once and I saw a museum that had some really good records. Now, maybe it was that, or maybe it was Ellis Island. I'm not quite sure, but do you have to go to physically somewhere to get them, or now it's all on the internet and anyone can get it?
It's not all on the internet. There's a great deal of information that is accessible online, actual copies of digital records. And they're online through a variety of different places. Ancestry has billions of records accessible. Sometimes it's just an index, but most of the time it's an actual record. If there's an index, it may tell you to go someplace else. There's an Austrian group, genteam.at, where there's indexes of records and you can ask them for the records. Jewish Gen has links to a lot of records, especially through JRI Poland, Jewish Records Indexing Poland, where
Mm-hmm.
they've got millions and millions of records that have been indexed where there are links to the actual records. So there are lots of things online. I like, though, to be able to walk into an archive, whether it's the New York Municipal Archives that have birth, marriage, death records that are there. Some of those are also at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City and available digitally through any of the family history centers while you're on site there. But I like walking into the archives. You can never tell what you're going to find, what you're going to hear from a conversation going on.
Do you think you're do you feel like you're like Sherlock Holmes, like sleuthing around, like finding hidden gems of cool stuff?
Sure.
I love that.
Like
You
national
you
treasure.
don't really resemble Sherlock, but I will say that I did go to
Wait
his
for my hat.
I would say it's more like national treasure.
Yeah, national treasure. That's right. So what would you tell someone who's like, oh my God, this is so cool. I want to do this for a living. I want to go into business as a genealogist. What would you tell someone? Dr.
Well, so there's a lot of different paths that a person can take. But the first thing I would recommend to people is that they go to genealogy conferences or take classes at the institutes. There's a lot of, they're called institutes. I just taught for a week at GRIP, the Genealogical Research Institute of Pittsburgh. And this, of course, was virtually this year, where a team of us, Emily Garber, Laura Diamond, and Marion Smith, did a week of classes on Jewish research, primarily Ashkenazic, Eastern European research, talking about immigration, talking about names, graveyards. So someone who's an aspiring genealogist really needs to go to one of these institutes or more than one over a course of several years. They should definitely attend conferences like Roots Tech, like the International Association of Jewish Genealogy Societies conference, Jamboree. There's conferences all over the world that make a lot of sense and can help you learn to focus on a specific area or areas or a particular ethnic background, cultural background of a group of people. I'm in corporate genealogy now, but when I started, after I was probably way over my head in my own personal research, I've got about 17,000 people on my tree, and I'm in the process.
That's insane. 17,000?
Yeah.
Like it's an actual tree, like you click on and it's like it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
And
you should have
right
like
now
a
I'm
Sunday family dinner. Have everyone over for dinner or something.
seriously, most of those people are dead.
I know.
That would be scary.
Wow.
Yeah, so right now I'm in the process of trying to clean things up because there's not duplicated people, but some of the information is duplicated because I've merged my tree several times with other versions of a program and then put it on Ancestry. So for example, I might have 3 1910 censuses attached to one particular person. That person only appeared on the 1910 census once. Another person, though, might have 3 1910 censuses attached to them and actually appears 3 times in that census. So you might want to ask, how is that possible? Well, this woman got married right after the 1910 census was taken. So she's was taken at her parents' house. So she's living with her parents. A couple of days later, she's married and she and her husband have a new apartment. And it just happens to coincide with when the enumerator's knocking on their door. So she's enumerated with her new husband. And then they go away a few days later for a kind of delayed honeymoon to a hotel where there's cabins. They rent a cabin for a couple of weeks and they're enumerated at that cabin.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and one of the challenges is, were these the same people or are they 3 different couples with the same names?
Let me ask you, I'm going to go back to the conferences. So I want to go into genealogy and I fly to these conferences and I spend a week there. It seems to me like I'll pick up some stuff on it, but maybe I got to do this more, or maybe I got to work for someone. I need to work for a senior genealogist to learn the ropes, or like, do people do it as a side gig and then ramp up momentum and then do it full time? How do they, is it a slow thing? How do
Well,
most genealogists work?
well, I don't know about most genealogists. I know that when I started, first I was doing my own stuff, and then I started taking on projects for friends, and they
Mhm,
would all say, "Let me pay you." And I'd say, "No, I'm not ready for you to pay me yet. When I am, I'll tell you."
mhm,
And then slowly I started taking paying clients.
mhm.
And then 5 years ago, I was recruited by Ancestry to come out and join their Ancestry Progenealogist division, which does private client research. So we contract out with private individuals who are looking for their research to be done. And I head up a team of researchers that specializes in Eastern European and Jewish research. That is, all the research we do is not Jewish, and all the research we do is not Eastern European. So we
Mhm.
do research on Catholics who were from Poland or
Yeah.
Germany or almost any place else. Um, a couple of people on my team graduated from, well, at least one person on my team right now graduated from BYU,
Mhm.
Brigham Young University. They have degrees in family history. Other people were dabbling on their own, and we hired them as assistants. That's a very entry level position where they come in, they learn the ropes, and of working for clients, of working in a corporate environment. Now, corporate environment's not for everyone.
Mhm.
We have more structure and more regulations and protocols than you would have if you were working on your own. Lots of people out there are working on their own, or they're working with a group of people, a consortium, say.
Sure.
Um, and there are courses at places. Boston University offers a wonderful, I think it's in 3 parts now, where there's like an introductory part, and then there's a beginner's um, series, and then there's a more advanced series. And these are all done online always. I don't think any of them are in person, but I may be wrong about that. Uh, and that helps equip somebody with the background knowledge that they need to do to go out. But the only way you can really do this is by doing it.
Yeah. Well,
So
let
if
me ask
somebody,
you about that.
Mhm, yeah.
What have you learned about yourself on this path? Like, you were in like liberal education, right? In the
Mhm.
Jewish sector. Next thing you know, you take a nap, you wake up, you got 17,000 people on your tree. You're the head honcho at Ancestry. You're researching stuff still with your dad. What have you learned about yourself on this path?
um, that I'm crazy. Uh,
We're all crazy. I love that Apple commercial. You know, the Apple one where we're all crazy enough to do it. The
mm,
Apple, yeah, that
yeah,
think of that. But that's a good crazy.
yeah. Well, and this is a good crazy too. So, so I suppose that that I should say 2 things right now. Um, in my office, there's about, I don't know, 110 genealogists,
Hmm.
and we're on 11 different teams. We've got offices in Germany and San Francisco and Dublin and London, and each of the different teams focuses on a different area of research. We all kind of rolled into the areas that we work in because of our own backgrounds, or because
Sure.
something really spoke to us.
Hmm.
And so so what I've learned about myself is that I get as much pleasure doing other people's genealogy as I do my own. I take personal pleasure in it. I get really involved in somebody else's research, as involved as I get it in my own. And my background in Jewish education really dovetailed in this. And I don't know how many of your listeners, or you for that matter, might relate to this, but in Judaism, there's a concept of Lador Vador, from generation to
Yeah,
generation.
ask Jonah. He knows that one.
Yeah.
I do. I
Whenever
do.
I Whenever I close his door, sometimes I'm like, Lador Vador.
Yep, that is true.
Yeah,
And
no, from generation to generation, for sure. In
right,
any, I mean, not just Judaism, it could be any religion or
anything.
family.
Yeah, well, and the other piece of it is the fifth commandment of those famous 10. In Hebrew, it's kibud av v'em, honoring your mother and your father. And this, to me, this kind of work speaks to that. I'm honoring my ancestors, my parents most directly, but certainly my grandparents who I knew, and also down through the generations. And while I'm doing that, I'm bringing names to light. You can't restore somebody to life that's dead. I mean, that's obvious, except through memory. If you don't have a memory of them, they're gone. So as an Eastern European Jew, somebody whose family, like just about every other Jewish family, Eastern European or otherwise, was negatively impacted in the most horrific ways by the Holocaust, by World War II. Through this work, I'm able to restore to memory people whose names were forgotten.
Yeah, it's
People whose
amazing.
people whose names were,
Beautiful.
were just like, it wasn't somebody saying, okay, I'm going to forget about that person. It's not wanting to talk
Yeah,
because it's too painful about their parents or grandparents. So unintentionally, they allowed their descendants not to know who those people were.
yeah, it's very, very special. Have you ever heard of the book Have a Little Faith by Mitch Albom?
Oh, yes.
Have you read it?
No,
Okay, he's such a good writer.
he is.
And it's a book about faith, but it's not, I'm pulling it up on my Kindle because I want to read this to you and everyone who's going to listen to this. Is Here it is about yeah, okay. So he says, what do people fear most about death? I asked the rabbi. Fear, he thought for a moment. Well, for one thing, what happens next? Where do we go? Is it what we imagine? That's big. Yes, but there's something else. What else? He leaned forward. Being forgotten, he whispered. The, the second death, the first death is in, he says, to think that you died and no one would remember you. I wonder if this is why we tried so hard to make our mark in America, to be known. Think of how important celebrity has become. We sing to get famous, expose our worst secrets to get famous, lose weight, eat bugs, even commit murder to get famous. Our young people post their deepest thoughts on public websites. They run cameras from their bedrooms. It's as if we're screaming, notice me, remember me, yet the notoriety barely lasts. Names quickly blur and in time are forgotten. How then, I asked, how can you avoid the second death of being forgotten? In the short run, he said, the answer was simple: family. It is through my family that I hope to live on for a few generations. When they remember me, I live on. When they pray for me, I live on. All the memories we have made, the laughs and the tears. So I could read more and more, but it echoes exactly what you're saying. And I think you're doing great work. I mean, I think, this is why people get into this, is because they want to remember. And part of that ancestor, that great, great, great grandparent, is still in us in some way. So I think you're doing great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And it's so important. At part of Eastern European Jewish culture is naming our children after deceased relatives. And then, but that shouldn't be enough. You need to tell them the stories too,
Sure.
so that they know where their name relates to, so that they can see if they've inherited any of the traits that the person had after whom they're named.
For sure.
If you're doing Eastern European Jewish genealogy, one of the big challenges is to figure out what the person's name was when they got to the US. or
Yeah.
Canada or any place else. Names were not changed at Ellis Island. Even though it's like this crazy self-perpetuating myth, but it didn't happen. And people changed their names after they left Ellis Island. They get to the mainland, their relatives or their friends or whoever they're connecting with goes, oh, you're such a greener. Anybody's going to know that you're new here. Don't you want to fit in?
Yeah.
Change your name. So they pick on a name, or they hear about a person and say, I want to use that name.
That's what happened with my dad's side of the family. The last name was Krumholtz, and they changed it to Krane.
Interesting. Easier to spell.
Krane.
Yeah, easier to spell.
Yeah, easier to spell for sure. So, do you ever go back to Eastern Europe to just like travel there and just check out a city or something?
Yeah, I travel for two reasons. I travel either to be doing client research or with a client to help them see where their families were from.
That is awesome.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's so cool. I was working with a client whose residence, her ancestral residence, we found on a street in a town in Lithuania. And I found it on a map. We show up in this place, and to my shock, that place is still standing.
Wow.
And they lived there, you know, sometime in the late 19th century. So we didn't know when this place was originally built, but it didn't really matter. The house was there. People are still living in it. And we could say, wow, look at that. Look at that permanent space your ancestors made. So I took a really, really crazy trip in 2018 when you could still do crazy trips, right?
Yeah,
back in the day, yeah, when things were normal and we didn't know how abnormal things ever would become. So I went to Eastern Europe with 5 members of my team, and we have a lot of researchers on site all over Eastern Europe. And so we would pick up some of these researchers, travel for a few days with them, and bring them back home. We went to archives. We went scouting around, looking for places where our clients had lived. We were in 22 days of travel: Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia.
Wow, it's a lot of places.
It is a lot of places. We felt like we were just living in this van permanently.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was amazing. We not only saw where people lived. Most of us on that trip, all of us on that trip, had ancestors that came from places that we've been able to identify in Eastern Europe. So even if we weren't in our ancestral home, we were looking at things that we could put into context.
Did you feel like you were all connected?
Understand.
Did you feel like all of you were connected? Like, did you feel even more like you were a family?
Yeah, and most of the people on my team aren't Jewish, and we're very connected. We work well together. We're like in each other's heads a lot because of the intense work that we do. But this gave us not only a connection because we were traveling around, but it gave us an understanding of each other and the backgrounds.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because we were there. I don't think we were actually in the town that any of us had family from. But we were close enough to all of those places to say, yeah.
That's cool.
Wow.
So I want to bring in a financial aspect to this because this is money. You got this.
Yeah.
What do you think your smartest financial decision has been on your career path, and why?
To save, my smartest financial decision, to listen to my father when he told me to go speak to a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad's amazing because he relies on information from various financial advisors, but he also makes his own decisions. And he can't understand that I can't figure out which stocks or bonds or to invest in, and why I should be doing that.
Yeah.
That's just not where my brain works. So it's from people like you.
Got it.
My son's in the finance business. He's got an MBA from Columbia, and he works for a major company. But he didn't get that gene from me for sure.
Well, Lador Vador, your father to him.
Yeah.
So, so saving and hiring smart people, that's good. And then let's just talk a little bit about the business aspect for you. So if someone wants to work with you and you don't necessarily know the scope and how long it's going to be and how drawn out it is, how do you price yourself not knowing if you're going to go down some rabbit hole and it's going to be forever and they're going to annoy you, or it's going to be you're in over your head, or all that blah stuff? How do you deal with that in business?
Very carefully. This is tracing your genealogy, tracing your ancestral history using a professional is not for the weak-hearted. It's an expensive proposition. When I take on a case that deals with Jewish or other Eastern European research, I tell clients it's going to be at least 50 hours of work, and it may very well be much more than that. But as we go along, we start by taking a look at what the client knows. So a lot of people have their own trees. They've got a tree on Ancestry. They've got a tree on their computer. They've got a hand-drawn sketch. They give me this stuff. We take a look at it. We use the stuff that they've done, spend a little bit of time looking at what they did, make sure that they've connected the right people to their family. You know how many Jonathan Schwartzes there are in the country in any particular time period? Or David Miller, or I'm just trying to think of common names. Abraham Jones. You
Bob Smith.
Bob Smith, right? You go looking for people, and you're going to have thousands, perhaps, people that are living during the same time period. So we start by designing a tree, building a tree ourselves based on information that the client knows. And then we'll take it back. I stay in touch with my clients every step of the way. I generally am in touch with them every, say, 4 to 6 weeks, except when I'm finding things that I think are important or that I know that they're going to find intriguing. Say you wanted to know the name of your ancestor when they arrived in the US or Canada, and I've just found that. I'm going to be on the phone or shooting you an email that's telling you this. When we're close to the end of our 50 hours, we're going to know or have a good idea about what the next steps are going to be. And the client has an option. Do you want us to stop? Do you want us to tie up loose ends, write a report, send you a report, copies of all the records, and a research journal now? A research journal has citations for all of the repositories we looked at, transcriptions of the records, translations if the records aren't in English, and just end it now? Or do you want us to keep going?
Got it.
So for a lot of people, 50 hours, we charge $125 an hour. For a lot of people, 50 hours is a really major stretch.
Yeah.
That's as much as they want to do. That's fine. I love being able to go further because, once I'm into your family, I'm really into your family. And I'm curious about all this stuff.
So but if you're into the family, do we have you over for dinner?
No, sometimes.
Do we birthday cards? Do we hang out with you?
You could.
You're in New York, right?
No, I'm not. My office is in Salt Lake City.
Oh, that's right, Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I was in New York visiting my parents last week.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I took my life in my hands. I got on a plane.
But good for you. Good for you. But there's a lesson here. You're very clear on what your price is. You're upfront about it. Does the client pay you half upfront and half on completion, or the whole thing upfront?
Everything is paid upfront, generally on a credit card, sometimes by check.
Yeah.
It's put into a restricted account.
Yeah.
We bill it in 6-minute increments, the same way attorneys do.
Yeah. And do they
I-
pay Ancestry or you?
No, Ancestry. I work full-time for Ancestry
Got
Pro
it.
Genealogists.
Got
So
it.
the payment is made to them. If I've overestimated what the research is going to take, which happens occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes I'll hit a dead end and I'm going to say, okay, there is absolutely no point in continuing this because I'm not going to find what you're looking for. Then we'll refund the balance that remains on a client's
Yeah.
retainer.
That's cool. I want to just speak for a minute because this is a show a lot about business, and just highlight my view of Ancestry and get your opinion, and then we'll turn it over to Jonah. So Ancestry, their business model is it's there's very, very little inventory, right? It's all of the information is online. They're not buying 40 tons of steel or something like that. And it's a very scalable business model because all they're doing is aggregating data and making it easy for people to use and facilitate.
Well, they're also scanning and digitizing a lot of
Okay.
information
So
and indexing it.
it's a front end expense, and that's a one-timer, and then they can collect off of that based on their subscribers using that data, right? They
I
spend
believe
money.
so.
Yeah, they spend money one time, like, or they keep doing things, but the model is you spend money one time, and then you have a recurring annuitization, a little bit of what's called a churn, where people drop off, they don't pay, they got to bring in new people. So it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe a Netflix-ish, except they're buying a movie, but they're digitizing data, and then they get a recurring revenue stream, and as soon as they meet their fixed costs, every additional subscriber and every time they onboard someone and they stay, it goes right to the bottom line. So it's a very scalable business model where the incremental dollar that they bring in, there's not necessarily an incremental cost for that person who joins. And to me,
For the
yeah,
subscriptions.
to
Yeah.
me, yes, there's that upfront spend on doing what you're talking about. But if they brought in tomorrow 40,000 people, does it cost them any more? No. Right?
Well, they might wind up having to upgrade some systems in order to be able to accommodate.
But it's a teeny thing versus what they're going to collect. I think it's a great business model, and I've heard nothing but good things about the people that run it, how nice they are. I
They
mean,
are phenomenal. It's
yeah,
the most amazing company
yeah,
to work for.
yeah. I mean, I've spoken to some people there, and I mean, everyone who I've met that's Mormon is super cool and nice and like easy to get along with, has great values, and they're great people.
Well, we're not part of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, which is how they prefer to be referred to
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
We're not owned by the church. They own an organization called Family Search,
Okay.
and Family Search and the Family History Library is probably the largest collection of genealogically relevant material in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Ancestry is definitely not owned by, but has collaborative.
Yeah, some of the people that I've spoken to who work there and they've all been really, really nice people.
Yeah, we've got a really diverse workplace
Yeah.
in all of the divisions, and that's really spectacular. I have the utmost respect for the company as a whole. For they do constant training for us. I'm in something right now called the Ancestry Management Program, which is really intense and ongoing, training managers in working with the people that we supervise.
Mm-hmm.
And so ongoing training, not only for managers, but also for everybody.
That's great.
And they're very, very supportive of their employees. My team is wonderful. Everybody on my team has been working for us, I think, for at least 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's people on my team that have been working for the company for 8 or 9 years. I've been there for 5 years.
That's great. Cool. Well, it's been so good to have you on. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jonah Krane to see if he wants to say anything, ask you some questions, and connect. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I would just like to say, first of all, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure hearing about your story and your journey in becoming a genealogist, and just all it takes, and all like everything that's encompassed in being a genealogist. That was fascinating. And as me, who's is someone who's also very into genealogy myself and has done an extensive amount of work doing my own family trees and contacting and emailing people, I just want to like just thank you. And
Do people cringe when they see you at parties because you're standing there? They know you're going to ask them questions.
exactly, like I went to like I remember, I think it was like last summer, I was with like my mom and we were in Seattle and we were at a bar mitzvah and I was asking relatives there questions about ancestry, and we were at a bar mitzvah and like people were like, what? I was like 16 or 17 at the time and they're like, this young kid's asking all these questions. Like, we can't believe it. But yeah, no, I love it. And I even helped my parents out with genealogy. Like there was like a relative of my grandma's who, a cousin of hers, a first cousin of hers who she lost contact with. And I was actually able to find her through Ancestry, and
That's
we were able
great.
to get in contact with her. And my dad and I called her, and it was stuff like that's just incredible to me.
It makes you feel so good when you,
Because,
and things are able to be accomplished.
like you said, the whole like Sherlock Holmes type of hunt, like the whole hunt and the puzzle of finding the pieces and finding these relatives and like information about them, like is like what I love. Like I love about it. I love puzzles and love all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Well, when you graduate from college and you're looking for your first job, don't forget about me. Call me and let's see if we can manage to put you to work or get you some extra training so that you can come to work with us.
That would be awesome.
Great. Cool. Anything else, Joe? Are you good?
I think that's it.
Great. Well, Dr. J, thank you so much for coming on. We learned a lot about you, a lot about genealogy, a lot about just your path, and it was really, really good to have you on. So where can people go to get more information in working with you?
So they can email me directly at jsilverman, spelled Silverman, at ancestry.com. Or you can go to ancestry.com and at the top of your screen, click on extras and go down to Progenealogists. And you'll see a list of experts there with bios. You should see my photo and a bio there.
We'll put a link in the show notes and
Okay.
a link to your email address.
Great.
Great. Well, thank you again for coming on. Everybody, if you're listening, go check out Janette. She's got a great path where she's been, where she's going, what she does. And if you hire her, I bet you'll be pretty happy.
Thank you so much, Justin. This has been such fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonah. I hope to see you pretty soon.
Oh, that would be amazing. I hope to see you soon as well.
Start coming to conferences.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Have a question? Want to get in touch with us? Need some help and advice with your finances? Just go to coolmoneyshow.com and reach out to us. That's coolmoneyshow.com.
Krane Financial Solutions is an SEC registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products. No investment decision should be made based solely on any information provided herein. We do not provide legal, accounting, or tax services. We recommend that all investors seek out the services of competent professionals in any of the aforementioned areas. Certain information provided has been obtained from third-party sources that we believe reliable. However, it's not been independently verified and is not guaranteed.